Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Reborn in Highschool DxD as a Lucifuge. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 41, Breathing Styles Are This Easy? The basics of breathing styles was total concentration breathing. The next stage was total concentration, constant. Only by maintaining total concentration breathing for extended periods could one achieve a qualitative change in their strength. This advanced state of continuous total concentration breathing was called constant. In the constant state, not only were physical abilities maintained at a high level, but base strength also increased. This was somewhat similar to the Super Saiyan full power state in the Cell saga of Dragon Ball. Only after mastering total concentration, constant, could one potentially awaken the Demon Slayer mark. The Demon Slayer mark significantly enhanced physical abilities. To awaken it, one's body temperature needed to reach 39 degrees Celsius with a heart rate exceeding 200 beats per minute. This placed a tremendous burden on the body. The Demon Slayer mark was a manifestation of human physical potential pushed to its absolute limit. However, this enhancement came at the cost of one's lifespan. Those who awakened the Demon Slayer mark rarely lived past the age of 25. Of course, Yoriichi Tsujikuni was the sole exception, as he was born with the Demon Slayer mark. Therefore, Roy suspected that total concentration breathing itself was a method of exchanging life force for power. The constant state intensified the burden on the body, and the Demon Slayer mark was akin to visibly burning away one's life force. However, this wasn't a concern for devils, who were virtually immortal. Apart from breathing styles, there was another state in Demon Slayer, the transparent world. If the Demon Slayer mark represented the pinnacle of physical strength, the transparent world was the ultimate state of combat technique. Those who achieved the transparent world could completely erase their presence, becoming as if they didn't exist. In this state, the movements of the outside world appeared to slow down, allowing the user to perceive everything with crystal clarity. This ability was somewhat similar to Ultra Instinct in Dragon Ball. Of course, it wasn't as powerful as Ultra Instinct. But even so, it was incredibly formidable. As Roy discussed this with Urokodaki, he grew eager to experience the wonders of breathing styles firsthand. They moved outside, where Siko, Makomo, and the other students gathered curiously. Water breathing was one of the 5 foundational breathing styles derived from sun breathing. The Nichiren blades of water breathing users turned blue. By maintaining a clear mind, calmness, and a tranquil spirit like water, one could naturally master this style. Compared to other breathing styles, water breathing was the gentlest and easiest to learn. Skilled users of water breathing could unleash sword attacks that flowed like water, incredibly potent and versatile. Roy began adjusting his breathing. Gradually, his breathing pattern became unique. He focused his mind, striving for perfection. Suddenly, he inhaled deeply, drawing in a massive amount of air. His body surged with power. He learned it. Urokodaki exclaimed, astonished. He couldn't believe that Roy had mastered water breathing in an instant. Even Tanjiro, with his natural talent, had taken 2 years to achieve this. The other students had started practicing from a young age and received extensive guidance before mastering it. Yet Roy had learned it instantly after a single attempt. This talent was monstrous. Not only was Urokodaki dumbfounded, but Makomo, the other students, and even Tanjiro, who had just emerged from the house, were equally shocked. Only they truly understood the difficulty of mastering a breathing style. So this is breathing styles, Roy mused, sensing the changes within his body. He drew his katana and casually swung it. A wave of water-like energy surged from the blade, forming a crescent-shaped projectile that shot towards a tree several meters away. Silently, the crescent-shaped energy sliced through several trees before dissipating. The trees it had passed through were cleanly severed, their surfaces smooth. They stood for a moment before toppling to the ground. Amazing! Tanjiro gasped, staring at Roy in awe. He couldn't comprehend how Roy had unleashed such an attack. It had taken him 2 years of training just to cut a boulder. And these trees were as thick as that boulder. This was just a casual strike from Roy. If he were serious, the power of his attacks would be even greater. Even Urokodaki couldn't unleash such ranged sword attacks. Of course, this was partly due to Roy being a devil. Roy was pleased with the power of his casual strike. Previously, he couldn't have unleashed such sword attacks with pure swordsmanship. Now, having just learned water breathing, he could execute such powerful ranged attacks. Clearly, breathing styles significantly enhanced his strength. Mr. Urokodaki, Roy said, turning to the old man, would you mind demonstrating your water breathing? Of course, Roy-san. Please, observe carefully. Urokodaki drew his Nichiren blade and focused his mind. Then, he struck. Water breathing, first form, water surface slash. Urokodaki announced the name of the technique as he executed a swift, horizontal slash, creating a wave of water that surged forward with surprising force. Water breathing, second form, water wheel. Urokodaki flipped in the air, unleashing a circular slash. He continued, demonstrating all 10 forms of water breathing, culminating in the 10th form, constant flux. Wow, Urokodaki-sensei is amazing! Makomo and the other students exclaimed, their eyes filled with admiration. Although Roy's display was impressive, in their hearts, their teacher was still the most skilled. Chapter 42, The Challenge of Jyomiai Himojima, Siko accepts. Sakanji Urokodaki's techniques were indeed impressive. However, Roy had essentially mastered them after just one viewing. Thank you for your time, Mr. Urokodaki. It was my pleasure to be of assistance. Urokodaki understood that his techniques were nothing special in Roy's eyes. As night fell, everyone prepared for rest. Early the next morning, Roy went to a mountaintop. He was attempting to awaken the Demon Slayer mark. That's right, the Demon Slayer mark. He had skipped total concentration, constant altogether. After all, total concentration, constant was merely an advanced state achieved through prolonged total concentration breathing. It wasn't difficult for Roy. Since learning total concentration breathing the day before, Roy had already been maintaining the constant state. The Demon Slayer mark was a manifestation of human physical potential pushed to its limits. However, Roy was a devil. To awaken the Demon Slayer mark, he had to use total concentration breathing to elevate his devil physique to its absolute peak. Therefore, awakening the Demon Slayer mark was even more challenging for him compared to ordinary humans. That morning, under Roy's guidance, Siko also successfully learned total concentration breathing. To Roy's surprise, Nezuko also grasped it with ease. It seemed Nezuko possessed extraordinary talent, not just as a demon, but in other areas as well. Roy continued his attempts to awaken the Demon Slayer mark. Meanwhile, Urokodaki instructed Tanjiro in the techniques of water breathing. The final selection for the Demon Slayer Corps was approaching. Roy planned to take Makomo and Tanjiro with him to the final selection. Several days passed. The day after meeting Roy, Urokodaki had sent a letter to Kagaya Ubuyoshiki, the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps, informing him about Roy. Upon learning of Roy's abilities, Kagaya immediately replied, expressing the Demon Slayer Corps' full support in dispatching Jyomiai Himojima to deliver all the breathing style techniques. Inside Urokodaki's house, Jyomiai presented Roy with all the breathing style techniques. Jyomiai was a towering man with a monk-like appearance. He often wept, had a long scar across his forehead, was blind, and wore a brown kasaya. He was the strongest member of the Demon Slayer Corps. Despite his blindness, he could perceive people's hearts with his mind's eye. This was why Kagaya had sent him. Thank you for the trust of the Demon Slayer Corps, Roy said with satisfaction. Rest assured, in return, I will slay Muzan Kibutsuji within a month. Since Kagaya had provided him with everything he needed, Roy didn't mind helping them eliminate Muzan. Moreover, based on the original story, Tanjiro would soon encounter Muzan Kibutsuji and Asakusa while on a mission shortly after becoming a demon slayer. In the original story, upon seeing Tanjiro, Muzan was reminded of the fear Yorichi had instilled in him and fled. He then sent two demons, Susumaru and Yahaba, who claimed to be members of the 12th Kazuki, to attack Tanjiro. However, these two were merely small fry, not true members of the 12th Kazuki. This indicated that at that time, Muzan didn't have any other powerful demons at his disposal. It was the perfect opportunity to kill Muzan, and this window of opportunity wouldn't last longer than a month. On behalf of the entire Demon Slayer Corps, we thank you, Roy-san, Jiyomi said, bowing deeply. Then, he added, I've heard that Roy-san is a legendary devil. Forgive my impertinence, but could you perhaps allow me to witness your power? Is this a test? Roy wondered as he heard Jiyomi's request. He wasn't sure if this challenge was Kagaya's idea or Jiyomi's own initiative. But it was likely orchestrated by Kagaya. As the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps, Kagaya wouldn't simply believe such an unbelievable story based solely on Urokadaki's letter. After all, he hadn't witnessed it himself. Roy's expression remained unchanged. He turned to Siko and instructed, Siko, spar with Jiyomi-san. Remember, no killing blows. Roy had roughly compared the power levels in the Demon Slayer world. The Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps were roughly equivalent to low-class devils. With the Demon Slayer mark, they could reach the level of middle-class devils. On the demon side, the lower ranks of the 12th Kazuki were easily slain by any Hashira, so their strength was negligible. The 6 upper ranks of the 12th Kazuki were roughly on par with middle-class devils. As for Muzan Kibutsuji, Roy estimated his strength to be at least that of an high-class devil. Jiyomi hadn't yet mastered the transparent world. Therefore, even with the Demon Slayer mark, he wouldn't be a match for Siko. After learning breathing styles, Siko was a formidable force among middle-class devils. Yes, Siko replied, a dangerous, bloodthirsty smile spreading across her face as she looked at Jiyomi. Let's begin. She was eager to teach this man who dared challenge Roy a lesson. Jiyomi didn't underestimate Siko just because she was a woman. His mind's eye could perceive her immense strength. They moved outside. Jiyomi drew his unique Nichiren blade, a broad axe and flail connected by a long chain. Devil-san, it's an honor to spar with you, Jiyomi said, bowing respectfully. The honor is mine, Jiyomi-san, Siko replied, drawing her own sword. Chapter 43, Siko overwhelms Jiyomi Himojima. Seeing that Siko stood motionless, Jiyomi Himojima took the initiative and launched his attack. Stone breathing, first form, Serpentinite bipolar. Jiyomi swiftly swung his flail and axe, one to the left and one to the right, aiming to trap Siko in a pincer attack. The weapons flew towards Siko with incredible speed. Jiyomi, assuming Siko was too inexperienced to react, prepared to recall his weapons. But in the blink of an eye, Siko vanished from the spot where she had been surrounded. Jiyomi's eyes widened in surprise. As he searched for Siko's whereabouts, her voice rang out from behind him. Jiyomi-san, you should be more focused. Otherwise, I might defeat you in an instant, Siko chuckled softly. You're indeed formidable, Devil-san, Jiyomi acknowledged, his expression turning serious. Please be careful. His aura shifted, intensifying. Stone breathing, second form, upper smash. With a powerful shout, Jiyomi stomped on the chain connecting his weapons, causing the ground to crack. He then hurled his flail towards Siko with tremendous force. The flail tore through the air with a deafening roar, aimed directly at Siko. The sheer power behind the attack seemed capable of shattering mountains. However, Siko effortlessly dodged the ferocious blow with a simple sidestep. Boom! The flail crashed into the ground, creating a massive crater. Despite its immense power, Jiyomi's attack was too slow. After evading the attack, Siko decided to go on the offensive. With lightning speed, she closed the distance between them and unleashed a swift slash. Jiyomi, however, was a seasoned Hashira with exceptional combat instincts. Though he couldn't match Siko's speed, he reacted instinctively, leaping back to avoid her attack. He then spun his flail around himself, creating a defensive barrier. Stone breathing, third form, stone skin. This technique had once neutralized Muzan Kibutsuji's blood demon art, Black Blood, Brambles in the original story. It boasted incredible defensive capabilities. But Siko didn't back down. She gripped the hilt of her sword, assuming a Iato stance. Water breathing, Iato slash. With a swift draw, Siko unleashed a blinding flash of blue light. Gyomei's impenetrable flail defense was instantly cleaved in two. This was the culmination of Siko's days of dedicated training, fusing the Yasuji family's Iato swordsmanship with water breathing to create a devastatingly powerful Iato slash. What? Gyomei was stunned. He couldn't believe his stone skin had been breached so easily. His flail was forged with scarlet ore, a rare and incredibly durable material. Yet, it had been sliced clean through. He was shocked and dismayed, especially considering the rarity of scarlet ore. Siko's ability to cut through the flail so effortlessly was partly due to her sword. Although not a divine weapon, it was crafted by devils and far sharper than a typical Nichiren blade. However, the primary reason was Siko's superior strength. Well, Gyomei-san, shall we continue? Siko asked with a playful smile, looking at the stunned Gyomei. No, I concede defeat, Gyomei sighed, admitting defeat without hesitation. He knew that the Devil-san had been holding back. Otherwise, with her initial speed, he would have already lost. Even if he activated his Demon Slayer mark, his speed would only be comparable to hers. Moreover, activating the mark would significantly shorten his lifespan. It was a technique meant for desperate battles against demons. And this Devil-san was merely one of Roy's servants. The extent of Roy's own power was beyond his comprehension. With that thought, Gyomei took a deep breath and knelt before Roy on one knee. Gyomei Himojima greets Roy-sama. What's this? Roy asked, confused by Gyomei's sudden change in demeanor. Before I came here, Oyokata-sama informed me that you are the new leader of the Demon Slayer Corps, Gyomei explained. From now on, we are to follow your commands. I acted on my own accord, attempting to gauge your strength. Please, Roy-sama, punish me for my insolence. Roy finally understood. It seemed that Kagaya Abuyoshiki possessed a unique ability to foresee certain events. He must have foreseen Roy's victory over Muzan Kibutsuji and thus instructed the Demon Slayer Corps to follow Roy's lead. Gyomei-san, there's no need for such formalities. Please rise, Roy said. Becoming the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps would make it easier for him to eliminate Muzan Kibutsuji. Roy had no reason to refuse. Roy-sama, the other Hashira will return after completing their missions. Do you have any instructions for them? Instructions. Roy pondered for a moment. Have them await my orders. Muzan Kibutsuji will be eliminated within a month. Yes, Roy-sama. A few days passed quickly. The final selection for the Demon Slayer Corps finally began. Roy set off for Emden Fujikasen with Siko, the other girls, and Tanjiro. Gyomei and the other Hashira remained behind, awaiting his orders. On a mountain blanketed in wisteria blossoms, Roy and his group arrived at the final selection site. Over a dozen young boys and girls were already there, waiting for the test to commence. The arrival of Roy's group immediately drew their attention. Chapter 44, Clinging to Zuko. Roy scanned the area, spotting a few familiar faces among the participants, Kaneo Tsuyuri, Zenitsu Agitsuma, and Genya Shinazugawa. The only one who didn't seem to notice Roy's group was Kaneo. She stood alone, her expression even more vacant than Makomo's, though undeniably cute. Wow, so many people. Is this the final selection site? Tanjiro exclaimed, looking around excitedly. Yes, Makomo explained. Once the trial begins, our task is to survive for 7 days on this mountain infested with demons. If we succeed, we'll become members of the Demon Slayer Corps. Having participated in the final selection before, Makomo was quite familiar with the process. Just survive? All right. Tanjiro cracked his knuckles, psyching himself up. Roy had been giving Tanjiro some swordsmanship guidance. After all, he was practically family now, so it was only natural to look after him. Thanks to Roy's training, Tanjiro was undoubtedly stronger than he was in the original story, and he was confident in his ability to pass the final selection. Foolish Oniya-chan, you must always be cautious when facing demons, Nezuko chided, seeing her brother's overconfidence. Yes, I understand. Tanjiro replied with a sigh, a hint of dejection in his voice. Ever since Nezuko became a devil, while she was still close to him, he felt that she wasn't as attached to him as before. He glanced at Roy with a hint of resentment. Nezuko now clung to Roy constantly, almost as if she considered herself his wife. Just then, two young figures, one with black hair and the other with white hair, approached them. Roy knew that the one with black hair was actually a boy dressed in girl's clothing. They were the children of Kagaya Abuyoshiki. The black-haired child was Kiriya Abuyoshiki, and the white-haired one was Kanata Abuyoshiki. This was a tradition of the Abuyoshiki family. Due to a curse, the male members of the family were prone to early deaths, while the females had a higher chance of survival. Therefore, the boys were raised as girls in their early years. Greetings, Roy-san, they both said, bowing respectfully. No need for formalities. Please, announce the start of the final selection, Roy instructed. Yes, Roy-san. They replied, and proceeded to declare the commencement of the final selection. The other participants, though curious about Roy's identity, were too focused on the impending trial to pay much attention. One by one, they entered Lucifuge Kaisane. Tanjiro, you go in too, Roy said to Tanjiro. After you complete the test, return to Mr. Urokodaki's place. What about you? We're going after the hand demon. We'll leave once we've dealt with it. The final selection required surviving for 7 days. Roy didn't want to waste time. They would leave after eliminating the hand demon. As for the final selection itself, once he defeated Muzan Kibutsuji, the final selection would become unnecessary. Of course, for Tanjiro, it was valuable training. Tanjiro was taken aback. He hadn't expected this. The thought of being separated from Nezuko again filled him with dismay. He looked at Nezuko with a pitiful expression. Oniya-chan, you're not a child anymore. Why are you acting like this? Nezuko scolded, seeing his dejected demeanor. Nezuko was usually a gentle and sweet girl, but she could be quite intimidating when angered. When they were younger, she had once scared a bully into begging for mercy. Seeing Nezuko's serious expression, Tanjiro didn't dare to complain further. He bid farewell to everyone and entered Lucifuge Kaisane. Nezuko wasn't worried. With Tanjiro's current strength, he could easily defeat even the hand demon, let alone ordinary demons. Once Tanjiro was gone, Roy looked at the girls and said with a smile, let's go in too. Tanjiro would encounter the hand demon shortly after entering Lucifuge Kaisane. They had to hurry. The final selection had just begun, and the hand demon was likely still asleep. Their destination was clear, the depths of Lucifuge Kaisane. A demon. Roy Oniya-chan, should we? Makomo's words halted their progress. She looked towards a large tree with disgust. Or rather, towards the demon hiding behind it. Roy had already sensed the demon's presence but had chosen to ignore it. Since Makomo had brought it to their attention, they had to deal with it. Clang! A sharp sound resonated through the air. Roy hadn't drawn his sword, yet a crescent-shaped energy wave shot out, aimed directly at the demon. The energy wave effortlessly sliced through the tree and pierced the demon's body. Boom! The demon's body exploded, reduced to a shower of gore. Such a devastating attack would likely only be survivable by an upper-ranked demon or Muzan Kibutsuji himself. Other demons, despite their resilience, wouldn't be able to recover from such an injury. Makomo, about to remind Roy that demons couldn't be killed without a Nichiren blade, was stunned into silence as she witnessed the demon's complete annihilation. This wasn't what Urokodaki-sensei had taught them. He had said that only Nichiren blades and sunlight could kill demons. But the demon showed no signs of regeneration. Seeing Makomo's bewildered expression, Roy chuckled and patted her head. Don't be surprised. Although demons are difficult to kill, there are many ways to do it. Makomo, reassured, stopped dwelling on it and closed her eyes, enjoying Roy's head pat. Nezuko, however, felt a pang of jealousy. She nudged Roy with her head, seeking his attention. Roy, with a sigh, gave her a head pat as well. Chapter 45, Makomo slays the hand demon. After dealing with the lesser demon, they continued their journey. Soon, they arrived at the deepest part of Lucifuge Kaisane. Roy frowned as soon as they reached the area. The stench was overwhelming. Demons emitted a foul odor, and the more humans they consumed, the stronger the stench. There was no doubt that the hand demon was here. Roy used his magic to block the unpleasant smell, finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. The hand demon should be inside, he said, pointing to a cave ahead. Let's finish this quickly. Siko and the other two girls followed suit, using their magic to ward off the stench. Suddenly, the ground began to tremble. A massive figure emerged from the cave. Its body was covered in grotesque hands, resembling a fleshy mountain, utterly repulsive. It was the hand demon. Jeju-ji. I've barely awakened, and food has already come to my doorstep, the hand demon cackled, its enormous body lumbering towards them. Each step caused the ground to shake, a testament to its immense size. So this is the hand demon? Siko observed with curiosity, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. Yes, Makomo said, her gaze cold and resolute. This is the demon Urokodaki-sensei captured, the one who murdered our fellow students. Today, she would avenge them. The hand demon, hearing Makomo's words, turned its attention to her. Its eyes lit up with glee upon seeing Makomo. Ah, another one. My lovely little fox. Tell me, Fox Cub, what year is it in the Meiji era? The hand demon didn't attack immediately. Instead, it taunted Makomo. It seems you don't recognize me anymore, Makomo said, her eyes icy. Oh? The hand demon sounded intrigued. Let me refresh your memory. In a flash, Makomo moved with lightning speed, circling the hand demon before returning to her original spot, leaving only an afterimage. Thwack! Thwack! All the arms on the hand demon's body were severed. A-cack! The intense pain only registered after its arms fell to the ground. The hand demon finally recognized Makomo. I remember now. You're that girl I ate before. But, how are you alive? I devoured you. The hand demon was frantic, its newly regenerated arms scratching at its own body, leaving bloody marks. It couldn't comprehend how the girl it had eaten was standing before it once again. The hand demon seemed to fall into a trance, muttering to itself. I remember those two particularly well. The strongest one had flesh-colored hair and a scar on his mouth. The other was a girl in a floral kimono. Small and weak, but agile. But I still tore off her arms and legs. And that strongest kid, seeing you dismembered, charged at me in a frenzy, trying to cut off my head. But in the end, I crushed his skull with a single punch. The hand demon burst into maniacal laughter. I won't fall for your tricks again, Makomo declared, unfazed by the hand demon's taunts. It's trying to anger Makomo-chan, Siko observed, recognizing the demon's strategy. That vile creature. Makomo-ne-san, do you want me to kill it for you? Nezuko, initially enraged, had calmed down but was still furious. Roy remained silent, leaving the decision to Makomo. No need, Makomo said, her eyes fixed on the hand demon. I will kill it myself. The hand demon was indeed cunning. It never attacked Urokodaki students directly. Instead, it would try to anger them with words. Once they were enraged, their breathing would become erratic, weakening their breathing style techniques. Then, the hand demon would strike the final blow. Makomo and Sabito had fallen victim to this tactic, leading to their demise. Otherwise, with their strength, they could have defeated the hand demon. Oh? You're not angered? The hand demon was surprised. Every time it used this tactic on Urokadaki's students, they would become enraged, making them easy targets. But this time, it wasn't working. "This time, I will kill you," Makomo declared. She drew her Nichiren blade and charged. The hand demon narrowed its eyes and launched several arms towards Makomo. Thwack! Thwack! Makomo effortlessly sliced through the incoming arms. Die! Seeing its arms severed so easily, the hand demon felt threatened and unleashed a barrage of arms. But it was futile. No matter how many arms it launched, Makomo cut through them all. She now possessed the strength of a middle-class devil, equivalent to an upper-ranked demon. The hand demon was no match for her. "It's over." After severing countless arms, Makomo suddenly appeared beside the hand demon's head. She swung her blade. Thwack! The hand demon's head was cleaved in two, its skull rolling to the ground. Impossible! The hand demon couldn't believe it. A moment later, it turned to ash, completely vanishing. Tears welled up in Makomo's eyes as she watched the hand demon disappear. "Sabito Nii-san, and all my fellow students, I have avenged you. You can finally rest in peace," she murmured, her voice filled with sorrow. "I'm sure they're happy knowing that the hand demon has been slain," Roy said, approaching Makomo and gently patting her head. Chapter 46, Offer for the Sisters. Feeling the warmth of Roy's hand on her head, Makomo couldn't help but turn and bury her face in his chest, sobbing softly. After a while, comforted by Roy and the others, Makomo finally calmed down. Looking at her tear-stained clothes, Makomo blushed and lowered her head, embarrassed to meet Roy's eyes. Roy chuckled softly at her adorable display. With the hand demon dealt with, they prepared to leave. When they returned to the starting point of the final selection, an unexpected figure awaited them. "Greetings, Roy-sama." A young girl with a butterfly-patterned haori knelt before Roy. She had black hair with purple tips, purple eyes, and a bob haircut. She usually styled her hair in a bun, but unfortunately, she was only 1.5 meters tall. This was none other than the popular character from Demon Slayer, Shinobu Kocho. "And you are?" Roy inquired. "I am the insect Hashira, Shinobu Kocho," she replied with a gentle smile. "I would like to invite Roy-sama to the Butterfly Mansion for a discussion." Roy had already planned to visit the Butterfly Mansion. Since Shinobu had personally come to invite him, there was no reason to refuse. "Thank you for the invitation, Shinobu-san. We would be honored to visit," Roy accepted. "Please follow me." Shinobu led the way, and they arrived at the Butterfly Mansion. It was already late at night, and everyone rested under Shinobu's arrangements. The next morning, after breakfast, Roy sipped his tea leisurely. His gaze, however, drifted towards Shinobu sitting opposite him. "Shinobu-san," he began, "I've heard that demons fear wisteria flowers." "Indeed," Shinobu confirmed with a smile. "Wisteria flowers are poisonous to demons. Even the slightest touch can be fatal." "So, Shinobu-san, are you curious about the difference between devils and demons?" Roy asked pointedly, glancing at the wisteria tea in his cup. "Of course not," Shinobu replied, her smile unwavering. "This is simply how we welcome guests at the Butterfly Mansion." "I don't believe you," Roy thought, rolling his eyes. Looking at Shinobu's sweet smile, he couldn't resist teasing her. He suddenly appeared before Shinobu, gently lifting her chin with a finger. "Let me tell you a secret," he whispered. "It's not just demons who can consume humans. Devils can too. Especially lovely young girls like yourself, Shinobu-san." Roy's eyes swept over Shinobu from head to toe, a playful glint in his eyes. Shinobu, startled by Roy's sudden action, instinctively crossed her arms defensively. Roy chuckled and returned to his seat, taking another sip of his tea. Shinobu realized she had been teased. Her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Shinobu-san, you didn't invite us here just for tea, did you?" Roy asked, amused by her reaction. Shinobu remembered the important matter at hand and pushed aside her embarrassment. She suddenly knelt before Roy. Roy-sama, please save my sister, she pleaded. I'm willing to do anything, even be devoured by you. Her face flushed crimson as she spoke the last part, clearly understanding the implication of Roy's earlier words. Oh? Is that so? Roy wasn't surprised by her request. He knew that Shinobu's older sister, Kane Kocho, had been killed by a demon. Shinobu must have heard about his ability to resurrect the dead and invited him specifically for this reason. Yes, it's true. Shinobu affirmed, her gaze unwavering. Roy wouldn't refuse such a readily offered opportunity. Very well. However, I must first ask your sister personally. Shinobu's eyes lit up with excitement. Ask her sister? That meant she could see her again. Roy smiled at her eagerness. With a wave of his hand, he channeled his magic towards Shinobu. A beautiful figure materialized beside Shinobu. It was the spirit of Kane Kocho. Kane, unable to let go of her sister, had been following Shinobu as a spirit. Roy's magic revealed her form. Shinobu, overwhelmed with joy, rushed to embrace her sister. However, she stumbled and fell, her arms passing through Kane's ethereal form. You're still as clumsy as ever, Shinobu, Kane's gentle voice echoed in Shinobu's ears. Nei-san! Shinobu cried, tears streaming down her face. The reunited sisters had much to discuss. Roy waited patiently until their emotions subsided before speaking. Kane-san, would you be willing to become my servant? He asked. If you agree, I can resurrect you. Then, you and Shinobu can be together again. Roy observed the two sisters, a devilish smile playing on his lips. Shinobu already agreed, didn't she? Kane teased, glancing at her sister. Why yes, Shinobu mumbled, blushing and avoiding her sister's gaze. In that case, I accept. But please, let me take Shinobu's place, Kane offered. She was referring to Shinobu's earlier offer to be devoured. Roy wouldn't allow that, of course. He wasn't about to let such a tempting offer slip away. That's not possible, Kane-san. Shinobu already made the agreement. One cannot go back on a deal with a devil, Roy declared, wagging his finger. Kane sighed, realizing she had no choice but to comply if she wanted to be with her sister again. You're quite the greedy devil, aren't you? She remarked. Roy simply smiled in response, not denying her observation. Chapter 47, Taking the Butterfly Mansion Wholesale, Ascending to High Class. Then, Devil-san, I look forward to working with you, Kane said with a gentle smile. Likewise. Now, let's begin the devil transformation ritual, Roy replied, a playful grin spreading across his face. With no one else present, Roy proceeded with the ritual. By the name of Roy Lucifuge, I command thee, soul of Kane Kocho, to become my servant devil, reborn as my pawn. A blue magic circle unfolded beneath Kane, shrouding her in a brilliant light. A pawn piece slowly merged into her body. After a long moment, a pair of devil wings sprouted from within the light, and then the glow subsided. Kane, now fully clothed and with a perfect physique, emerged from the magic circle and gently descended to the floor. Makomo and Nezuko blushed, covering their eyes with their hands, though they couldn't resist peeking through their fingers. Roy chuckled at their bashfulness. He, on the other hand, openly admired Kane's beauty. Shinobu, noticing this, tried to cover Roy's eyes, but her small stature prevented her from reaching him. She jumped and waved her arms frantically, but Roy simply placed a hand on her head, preventing her from jumping any higher. Defeated, Shinobu took off her haori and wrapped it around Kane. Kane slowly opened her eyes, a smile gracing her lips as she looked at Shinobu. However, realizing she was completely naked, her face flushed crimson. Shinobu-san, why don't you take your sister to get dressed? Roy suggested, not wanting to embarrass them further. Shinobu nodded, a blush on her cheeks, and led Kane away to change. They returned after quite some time. Shinobu entered the room with a pout, glaring at Roy. What's wrong? Roy asked, confused. Why does Nei-san look different now? Shinobu demanded. Silly Shinobu, people grow up, Kane chuckled, patting Shinobu's head. Just like you've grown. But why is Nei-san so much taller now? And those are much bigger too. Her old clothes don't fit anymore. Shinobu complained, her cheeks puffed out in frustration. Roy glanced at Kane. She was indeed taller, now about 170 centimeters, and her bust size had definitely increased, perhaps to a 36E. Her old clothes were indeed too tight. Standing next to Shinobu, Kane looked like an adult with a child. No wonder Shinobu was upset. Shinobu, there's no need to envy Kane, Roy said with a playful grin. If you want to grow up too, I can certainly help with that. Absolutely not. Shinobu retorted, glaring at him. Alright. If that's your decision, then let's proceed with the transformation ritual. And me too? Shinobu sputtered, pointing at herself in disbelief. Don't you want to be with your sister? Roy asked, a devilish smile spreading across his face. Once I've dealt with Musen Kibutsuji, I'll be taking Kane-san with me. Then, you'll be all alone again, Shinobu-san. Besides, you did promise to let me devour you. Kane couldn't help but pity her naive little sister. Shinobu was no match for this cunning devil. Trapped by his words, Shinobu had no choice but to agree. But what about the butterfly mansion if I leave with Nei-san? Shinobu asked, her voice laced with concern. There was still Kaneo Tsuyuri, their adopted sister, and the three little girls, Kyo Tarachi, Sumi Nakahara, and Naho Takada, as well as Aoi Kanzaki, the medic. What would happen to them if she and Kane left? That's a minor issue, Roy said dismissively. We'll simply have them become my servants as well. My castle could use a bit more liveliness. Shinobu's concerns were nothing to Roy. In fact, it was precisely what he had hoped for. Shinobu's face flushed with anger, her cheeks puffed out like a steamed bun. Roy couldn't resist poking her cheek, causing her to deflate like a balloon. With her sister resurrected, Shinobu no longer needed to maintain her facade and revealed her true, adorable self. Isn't this better, Shinobu? We can all be together, Kane said, gently stroking Shinobu's hair. Fine, Shinobu relented. But I need to ask for their consent first. No problem, Roy agreed with a smile. The devil transformation ritual commenced once more. By the name of Roy Lucifuge, I command thee, Shinobu Kocho, to become my servant devil, reborn as my pawn. Within the blue magic circle, a pawn piece slowly merged into Shinobu's body. Devil wings unfolded, and Shinobu successfully transformed into a devil. With the boost from the devil piece, Shinobu's power instantly soared to the peak of a middle-class devil. Kane, due to the energy expenditure from reconstructing her body, had slightly less magic power. However, her original strength was greater than Shinobu's, so she also reached the peak of a middle-class devil after the transformation. The feedback from their power surged through Roy, shattering the wall that had been holding him at the peak of a middle-class devil. Immense power coursed through his body. He instantly broke through to high-class devil, but the surge didn't stop there. It continued until he reached the mid-level of high-class devil. Then, a dormant power within him awakened. An icy aura emanated from Roy, freezing everything in its path. The chill spread for a mile, encasing the entire butterfly mansion in ice. However, under Roy's control, no one was harmed. Achoo! Shinobu sneezed, shivering in the frigid air. Although they weren't frozen, the icy aura emanating from the ice was incredibly cold. Even as newly transformed devils, they could barely withstand it. Chapter 48, Kaneo's Indecisiveness. Royoni-chan, what's happening? Nezuko asked, poking Roy, who was encased in ice. It seems like he's experiencing a breakthrough and awakening his bloodline ability, Siko explained thoughtfully. Roy had previously told them about the devil clans in the underworld. Most of the 72 Pillars devil families had unique abilities that would awaken at some point. For example, Rias had the power of destruction, and Riser Phoenix had the Phoenix's immortality. Now, Roy had finally awakened his devil ability, and Siko was overjoyed for him. Soon, the ice melted away, and Roy opened his eyes. Ha ha ha! I never expected to awaken a devil ability. What a surprise! Roy exclaimed, genuinely astonished. He would have to ask his sister about this when he returned. It seemed he had awakened an ice-based magic ability. This had immense potential, and Roy immediately thought of many ice-based techniques he could learn. Congratulations! Congratulations, Roy Onie-chan. Siko and the others offered their congratulations. Ha, I'm in a good mood today. Let's go shopping, Roy declared, leading the girls on a shopping spree. Few girls could resist the allure of shopping. Over the next few days, Roy spent his time training and enjoying himself with the girls. All the girls at the Butterfly Mansion, except for Kaneo Tsuyuri, who was participating in the final selection, had become his servants. Although he had promised to seek their consent, with Shinobu and Kane already his servants, there was no reason for the others to refuse. When the final selection ended, Kaneo returned to the Butterfly Mansion. Seeing Kane, she froze in place, her eyes wide with shock. Kaneo, why are you just standing there? Come here, Kane said with a warm smile, opening her arms. Hearing Kane's voice, Kaneo finally reacted. She rushed towards Kane and embraced her tightly. Tears streamed down her face silently. Kane felt a pang of sympathy. Although Kaneo was usually quiet and reserved, she was deeply attached to Kane. Kaneo, you've grown up. But you're still so adorable. Kane hugged Kaneo and nuzzled her cheek. Shinobu rolled her eyes. Kane had always doted on Kaneo, and it seemed nothing had changed. Kaneo, would you like to become my servant? Roy asked, extending an invitation. This was something both Kane and Shinobu had agreed upon. Since they were leaving with Roy, they couldn't leave Kaneo behind. Kaneo looked at Kane, hoping for an answer. Due to her childhood experiences, Kaneo struggled with making decisions, so she relied on Kane for guidance. However, Kane simply smiled at her, leaving the choice to Kaneo. Kaneo silently took out a coin from her pocket. This was a method Kane had taught her. Whenever she faced a difficult decision, she would flip a coin. Roy, however, couldn't allow her to rely on chance. What if the coin toss resulted in a refusal? He gently grasped Kaneo's hand. You can't make such an important decision with a coin toss, Kaneo, he said. How about this? If you want to be with Kane-san and Shinobu-san, nod your head. If not, shake your head. How does that sound? Shinobu couldn't help but interject. Hey! That's not a choice at all. Well, I can tell Kaneo has trouble making decisions. So, with only one option, she won't have to struggle, Roy explained with a playful grin. Shinobu couldn't argue with that. She couldn't bear to leave Kaneo behind. As expected, with only one choice, Kaneo nodded without hesitation. Shinobu sighed. Although she wanted to continue caring for Kaneo, she was a bit annoyed that Roy had succeeded so easily. It seems Shinobu cares deeply for Roy-san, Kane whispered in Shinobu's ear, noticing her sigh. Shinobu blushed. That's not true. I don't, she denied vehemently. Kane simply smiled without saying anything more. Roy then began the devil transformation ritual. By the name of Roy Lucifuge, I command thee, Kaneo Tsuyuri, to become my servant devil, reborn as my knight. A night piece merged into Kaneo's body, and devil wings unfolded, signifying the successful contract. Kaneo's talent surpassed both Kane and Shinobu's, and Roy happened to need a knight, so he used a night piece on her. Kaneo didn't disappoint him. Upon transformation, her power immediately reached the peak of a middle-class devil, matching her adopted sisters. Now, only the rook and queen pieces remained unfilled in his peerage. He wasn't in a hurry to find a queen. As for the rook, Roy already had someone in mind. Having essentially taken the entire Butterfly Mansion with him, Roy was in high spirits. With the final selection concluded, Tanjiro would soon be dispatched to a town in the northwest to investigate the case of missing girls. There, he would encounter the swamp demon, the culprit behind the disappearances. In the original story, the swamp demon had devoured a girl from the town, leading to a tragic outcome for her childhood friend. Therefore, Roy sent a message to Tanjiro through his Kasugai crow a day in advance, instructing him to head to the mission location and providing him with some information about the swamp demon. Chapter 49, The Final Rook Arrives. Although Tanjiro didn't have Nezuko's help this time, his strength had significantly improved. Moreover, with the information about the swamp demon, he should be able to handle it alone. Even though Roy knew Muzan Kibutsuji would appear in Asakusa, he couldn't go there in advance, as that would alert Muzan. If he took several Hashira with him and they were discovered, Muzan, with his cowardly nature, would definitely flee. It would then become much harder to kill him. Roy didn't slack off at the Butterfly Mansion either. He continued to practice breathing styles and ice magic every day. After Jiyomi Himajima delivered all the breathing style techniques, Roy tried them all. He discovered that it was only necessary to master one breathing style, as the total concentration, constant state required maintaining a single breathing pattern. Since each breathing style had a different breathing pattern, it was impossible to practice multiple styles simultaneously. It was best to focus on the style that suited him best. Roy continued to practice water breathing, which had excellent synergy with his ice abilities. On Roy's advice, Siko learned thunder breathing. Thunder breathing was the fastest of all breathing styles, perfectly complementing Siko's agility. As for sun breathing, Roy had obtained it from Tanjiro, intending to find a suitable girl to learn it. Roy's ice magic allowed him to freely manipulate ice. He had also developed several ice-based techniques. Roy-kun, do you think demons and humans can coexist peacefully? Kane suddenly asked one afternoon as they enjoyed their tea. Nei-san, you're still so naive, Shinobu sighed, shaking her head. Kane ignored Shinobu and waited patiently for Roy's answer. Hee, Roy chuckled. Let me ask you a question, Kane-san. Do you think humans can coexist peacefully with chickens, ducks, and fish? When you're hungry, you still eat them, don't you? But that's different. Roy interrupted her. It's not different. In the eyes of demons, humans are merely delicious food. I completely agree with Roy on this, Shinobu chimed in, nodding in agreement. Kane fell silent. Hee, perhaps this is a bit harsh for you to accept. In that case, why don't you ask a demon yourself? Roy suggested, seeing Kane's thoughtful expression. Kane was simply too kind, even towards demons. Ask a demon myself? Kane looked at him, puzzled. Yes. As it happens, you know this demon. It's Doma, upper rank 2. What? Doma, upper rank 2? Do you know his whereabouts? Shinobu exclaimed, her eyes widening. She would never forgive the demon who killed her sister. Of course. Doma is currently the leader of the Paradise Faith. You could say he's the demon who interacts with humans the most. Impossible. A demon established a religious cult in the human world? Shinobu gasped in disbelief. Nothing is impossible. As they say, the most dangerous place is often the safest, Roy shrugged. So, has Doma truly achieved peaceful coexistence with humans? Kane asked, seemingly unconcerned that Doma had killed her. She seemed more interested in whether Doma had actually managed to live in harmony with humans. Well, let's go see for ourselves, Roy replied with a sly smile. He was sure that once Kane witnessed Doma using his cult to lure in humans for consumption, she would abandon her naive notion. Let's not waste any time. Let's go find Doma now. Shinobu urged, unable to contain her eagerness. She had long desired to kill Doma, but she lacked the strength and his whereabouts. Now, as a devil with enhanced power, she was eager for revenge. All right, everyone who wants to come, gather around. The Paradise Faith was quite well known, and Roy had already inquired about its location. All he needed to do was open a portal. The girls gathered around him. Except for the 3 young girls from the Butterfly Mansion and Aoi Kanzaki, all the others were ready to go. But Roy didn't open the portal immediately. He looked towards the door. Just then, a figure entered. "Roy-sama, may I accompany you?" She had large, light green eyes, often flushed cheeks, and a beauty mark beneath each eye. She wore a white haori over her revealing Demon Slayer uniform and a short skirt. It was the love Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps, Mitsuri Kanroji. "Mitsuri, what are you doing here?" Shinobu asked in surprise. "Well, I finished my mission, and I heard that the new leader of the Demon Slayer Corps was here with you, Shinobu-san. And that your sister has been resurrected. So, I came to see for myself," Mitsuri explained. "Oh. You must be Shinobu's sister, Kane Kocho, right?" Mitsuri looked at Kane with curiosity. With similar features and attire to Shinobu, this must be Kane. It was incredible. Someone had actually been brought back from the dead. "Yes, I am Shinobu's elder sister," Kane confirmed with a smile. "Roy-sama is amazing," Mitsuri exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with admiration. "By the way, were you talking about going to find Doma, upper rank too?" "I'm Mitsuri Kanroji, the love Hashira." "Roy-sama, could I possibly join you?" Mitsuri asked, her cheeks flushing slightly. Mitsuri had joined the Demon Slayer Corps to find a husband stronger than herself. She had heard that the new leader of the Demon Slayer Corps was incredibly powerful, so she came to see for herself. And now, meeting him in person, she wasn't disappointed. As for Roy, seeing the perfect candidate for his rook piece appear before him, Roy couldn't refuse. Mitsuri Kanroji was the ideal choice for the rook. Chapter 50, Naive Kane. Mitsuri Kanroji was a perfect fit for the rook. With her large appetite and muscle density 8 times that of an average person, she possessed incredible strength and defense, surpassing even most men. "Of course, Mitsuri-san, please come over here," Roy said. "Eh? What are we doing?" Mitsuri asked, though she obediently joined the group. "You'll see in a moment," Roy replied with a mysterious smile. A blue magic circle appeared beneath their feet, radiating a brilliant light. The Lucifuge family's large-scale teleportation magic could transport others. In the next instant, they vanished from the butterfly mansion. They reappeared in a spacious church hall. Mitsuri, still dazed from the sudden teleportation, looked around in confusion. "Where are we?" "We're inside the Paradise Faith's church," Roy explained. It was already evening, but their devil vision allowed them to see clearly in the dim light. Paradise Faith? Mitsuri had only heard Shinobu mention finding Doma, upper rank 2. She hadn't been privy to the earlier conversation and was still confused. "We'll explain later. Let's find Doma first. Follow me." Upon entering the church, Roy immediately sensed Doma's presence. He used his magic to conceal their auras as they exited the church and approached the room where Doma resided. Inside, they saw Doma, with his white hair, rainbow eyes, and a serene smile perpetually etched on his face. He wore a hat and spoke in a calm, gentle tone. Doma sat facing a young girl, listening to her tale of misfortune. After hearing her story, Doma's smile remained unchanged. "That's truly unfortunate," he said in a soothing voice. "My child, allow me to offer you salvation." "Really?" "Master Bishop," the girl asked, her eyes wide with naive hope. "Of course. Come closer." The girl stood and approached Doma. Doma embraced her, his sharp fangs extending from his mouth. He was about to bite down. Shinobu, who had witnessed the entire scene, could no longer restrain herself. She burst through the window, kicking Doma away and snatching the girl from his grasp. "Damn it! Who's there?" Doma roared, enraged at having his meal snatched away and being attacked. He lunged at Shinobu with incredible speed, his iron fan coated in ice crystals aimed at her. The golden fan, adorned with lotus patterns, had edges as sharp as blades. Doma clearly intended to kill with a single blow. However, Shinobu was no longer the same girl he had encountered before. With a nimble leap, she effortlessly evaded his attack. Doma, now outside the room, found himself surrounded. "Who are you?" he asked, his smile still plastered on his face. But Doma had no human emotions. His smile was merely a facade. Doma, upper rank 2, it seems you don't remember me, Shinobu said with a cold sneer. You are. Doma looked at Shinobu, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Then, to everyone's surprise, he dug his fingers into his temples, seemingly searching his memories. Ah, I remember now. There was another girl who wore a butterfly Haori. Unfortunately, I didn't get to eat her. Such a shame. Doma finally recalled Kane, expressing his regret at not having consumed her. His words ignited Shinobu's fury, and she was about to attack. But Kane spoke up. Doma-san, it's an honor that you remember me. Doma turned towards the voice, his eyes widening in surprise. It's you! That girl from before? You're alive? His voice was filled with excitement. Not having consumed Kane had always been a lingering regret. Now that she stood before him once again, he could finally rectify that. Because Roy had concealed their auras, Doma didn't sense any danger. Doma-san, Kane asked with a gentle smile, do you believe humans and demons can coexist peacefully? Of course, Doma replied without hesitation. As the leader of the Paradise Faith, I've been guiding people towards salvation. Why don't you join the Paradise Faith, he offered, inviting Kane to join his cult. Ha! And your so-called salvation involves devouring them? Roy scoffed. Such lies could only deceive someone as naive as Kane. Despite his true intentions being exposed, Doma's expression remained unchanged. Everyone I've consumed has been saved, he claimed with a smile. They no longer experience pain or sadness. They become a part of me and find eternal happiness. His words were met with disgust from the girls. Kane lowered her head, murmuring, it seems I was truly naive. How could demons ever coexist peacefully with humans? Kane, don't be sad. There are demons who can coexist with humans, Roy reassured her. Really? Yes. But those demons don't need our concern. Our task is to eliminate the demons who prey on humans. Kane's eyes lit up at Roy's words. You're right. I was foolish. If we eliminate all the man-eating demons, the remaining ones must be those who can coexist with humans, right? Roy was relieved that Kane finally understood. While kindness was a virtue, showing kindness to enemies was foolish. Chapter 51, Kane slays upper rank 2. Doma-san, would you please do us the favor of dying? Kane asked, drawing her Nichiren blade and slowly approaching Doma. Doma let out a sinister chuckle. You can't kill me. This entire area is enveloped in my blood demon art. Allow me to grant you salvation. Doma's blood demon art was laced with a deadly poison. While speaking, he had already frozen his blood, transforming it into ice crystals that he dispersed into the air with his fan. Once inhaled, the ice crystals caused respiratory distress and eventually led to lung failure. Kane had fallen victim to this very technique in her previous life. However, as a newly transformed devil, Kane was unfazed by the poison. Any toxins that entered her body were instantly neutralized by her demonic power. This was why the others hadn't reacted to Doma's ploy. Mitsuri Kanroji, the only human present, was protected by Roy's magic. Impossible! Doma exclaimed, surprised that his blood demon art had no effect on Kane. Nothing is impossible, Kane retorted. Flower breathing, fifth form, peonies of futility. She wasted no time with further words. Kane unleashed a flurry of 9 consecutive thrusts from 4 different directions, all aimed at a single point, their trajectory resembling peony petals converging on Doma. Thwack! Before Doma could react, his neck was pierced and blood gushed out. However, such a wound wasn't enough to kill him. He swiftly retreated, and the gaping hole in his neck instantly regenerated. How can you be this strong? Doma exclaimed, touching his neck in disbelief. He couldn't believe that his neck had been pierced so easily. He felt a sense of danger he hadn't experienced in a long time. Flower breathing, sixth form, whirling peach. Kane didn't give him time to recover. She flipped in midair, unleashing a horizontal slash with flower petals fluttering in its wake. The attack was incredibly swift. Doma couldn't react in time and was decapitated. Throughout the fight, Doma was completely overwhelmed by Kane's speed. After severing Doma's head, Kane turned away, assuming the fight was over. However, she didn't notice that Doma wasn't dead. As a demon who had surpassed his limits, Doma wouldn't die even if beheaded by a Nichiren blade.
Kane, Doma isn't dead yet, Roy warned, seeing that Kane was about to be caught off guard.
What? Kane spun around. Doma had reattached his head.
I underestimated you, Doma snarled, his expression contorted with rage.
But now, I will kill you. Blood Demon Art. Crystalline Divine Children. With a roar, Doma created 5 ice clones of himself, each capable of independent combat. Although small, the clones were powerful and could use blood demon arts with the same potency as Doma himself. Blood Demon Art, Frozen Lotus. Blood Demon Art, Vine Wisteria. The 5 ice clones unleashed a barrage of different blood demon arts towards Kane. Flower Breathing, Second Form, Honorable Shadow Plum. Facing the onslaught of attacks, Kane activated her breathing style.
She unleashed a series of arcing slashes in all directions, their trajectory resembling plum blossoms, deflecting the incoming attacks. Then, with a burst of speed, she appeared before the ice clones. In an instant, she shattered all 5 clones.
However, Doma had anticipated this. He unleashed his ultimate technique. Blood Demon Art, Freezing Mist Lotus of the Freezing Sun. A colossal ice statue, over 10 meters tall, materialized. It resembled a bodhisattva sitting in meditation with its hands clasped together. Its sheer size exuded immense destructive power, and it emitted a vast cloud of poisonous ice mist. Doma cackled, controlling the ice bodhisattva to swat at Kane. Kane leaped out of the way.
The ground shook as the attack created a deep crater several meters wide.
What a powerful blood demon art! Roy exclaimed in admiration.
Doma's strength was originally only at the mid-level of middle-class devil, but this technique unleashed power comparable to the peak of a middle-class devil.
Even Kane had to temporarily retreat in the face of this ice bodhisattva. Trying to escape? Roy noticed Doma attempting to flee. Doma, seeing that Kane was occupied with the ice bodhisattva, tried to make his escape.
He knew he couldn't defeat Kane, let alone the others who hadn't even joined the fight.
Although Doma lacked human emotions, he wasn't eager to die. Ice Princess Rose.
A translucent ice rose materialized in Roy's hand.
He hurled it towards Doma. Upon contact, the rose encased Doma in ice, leaving only his head exposed.
This technique was inspired by that Ice Princess Rose technique from the anime Freezing. Even the name remained the same, and its power was formidable.
Without Doma's control, the ice bodhisattva became sluggish. Kane swiftly bypassed the ice bodhisattva and reached Doma.
She unleashed a series of swift strikes with her Nichiren blade.
Doma's head shattered into countless pieces.
He should be dead now, Kane said, relieved, seeing no signs of regeneration.
Mitsuri Kanroji, witnessing Kane's overwhelming strength, was awestruck. And Roy's ability to instantly freeze Doma shocked her even more. He was incredibly powerful. That was Doma, upper rank 2. If she had faced him, she would have been no match. Could this be the husband I'd been searching for? She wondered. Chapter 52, Inform the Hashira to gather, the time has come.
Mitsuri Kanroji had joined the Demon Slayer Corps with the goal of finding a husband stronger than herself. Now, faced with the incredibly powerful Roy, her thoughts raced, and her cheeks flushed red.
The moment Doma, upper rank 2, perished, Muzan Kibutsuji was instantly aware. Through Doma's final moments, Muzan saw that a woman had shattered his head. Muzan's expression remained unchanged. He lacked human emotions and empathy. All the demons he created were merely tools to him. However, he couldn't simply ignore the destruction of one of his tools. He summoned Kokoshibo, upper rank 1, and ordered him to eliminate the woman who had killed Doma. Kokushibo was the strongest of the upper ranks, formerly the elder brother of Yorichi Tsujikuni. His strength far surpassed Doma's. After dispatching Kokushibo, Muzan paid no further attention to the matter. Meanwhile, after dealing with Doma, Roy and the others returned to the Butterfly Mansion. Roy seized the opportunity to extend an invitation to Mitsuri. "Mitsuri-san, would you be willing to become my servant?" he asked. Eh? Mitsuri was surprised by the sudden offer from the new leader of the Demon Slayer Corps. And to become his servant, was this a confession? Should she accept or refuse? After a moment of hesitation, Mitsuri decided to accept. Her reason for joining the Demon Slayer Corps was to find a strong husband. This new leader could not only resurrect the dead and teleport people across vast distances, but he had also effortlessly frozen Doma, upper rank 2. Such a powerful man was the perfect husband in her eyes. I accept," Mitsuri replied, her face flushed. Roy smiled and, without wasting any time, began the devil transformation ritual. "By the name of Roy Lucifuge, I command thee, Mitsuri Kenroji, to become my servant devil, reborn as my rook." An ice-blue magic circle appeared beneath Mitsuri's feet, and a rook piece merged into her body. Light flashed. A pair of devil wings unfolded from within the light. The rook piece granted high attack and defense power. Combined with Mitsuri's already superhuman physique, 8 times denser than an average person's, she was now incredibly powerful, capable of withstanding even an high-class devil with her physical strength alone. "So this is what it feels like to be a devil," Mitsuri mused, clenching her fists and feeling the surge of power coursing through her. It was overwhelming. If the power bestowed upon her was this immense, how powerful was her master? Mitsuri gazed at Roy with fervent admiration. "Hee, Mitsuri, there will be plenty of time to witness my power later," Roy chuckled. Roy's strength had already reached the mid-level of high-class devil. Having awakened his devil ability, he felt invincible among high-class devils. He eagerly anticipated Riser Phoenix's reaction when they clashed upon his return. Roy continued to refine his ice-based techniques. After awakening his ice affinity, his magical talents seemed to have been unlocked. He could now use many magic spells he had only read about in his memories, and creating new techniques became much easier. Most of his ice-based techniques were inspired by the abilities from the anime Freezing. Of course, he had memories of many other ice users, such as Satellizer L. Bridget, Kuzan, Istef, and Toshiro Hitsugaya. Satellizer was arguably the strongest among them. Apart from Satellizer's techniques, the one Roy most desired to learn was Istefa's Mahapadma. It was an incredibly powerful ability that could freeze time and space within a certain range, an almost unstoppable technique. Even a demon king would be helpless against it. Unfortunately, it was too profound and complex for Roy to grasp on his own. Several days passed, and Tanjiro successfully completed his mission to investigate the missing girls. The childhood friend was saved, and the swamp demon was slain. Tanjiro would soon head to Asakusa, where he would encounter Muzan Kibutsuji for the first time. It was time for Roy and the others to depart as well. Shinobu-san informed the Hashira to gather here. "Muzan Kibutsuji will be appearing soon. This is our best chance to kill him," Roy instructed before their departure. He intended to take the Hashira with him to Asakusa. After all, they were going to a crowded city. To avoid harming innocent civilians, the Demon Slayer Corps would need to evacuate the area. Shinobu's eyes lit up with excitement at the prospect of finally killing Muzan Kibutsuji. "Is it true?" she asked eagerly. "Of course," Roy replied with a smile, patting Shinobu's head. Although Shinobu disliked being patted on the head, she couldn't resist Roy, given her small stature. Shinobu, after finally escaping Roy's affectionate gesture, summoned her Kasugai crow to relay the message. That afternoon, all the Hashira gathered at the Butterfly Mansion, having completed their respective missions and ready to follow Roy's commands. Inside the Butterfly Mansion, the Hashira stood together. "I won't waste time with unnecessary words," Roy announced. "Tonight, Muzan Kibutsuji will appear in Asakusa. I need you all to accompany me there, along with the demon slayers under your command.
Roy stated his purpose directly. The Hashira were excited at the prospect of finally confronting Muzan Kibutsuji.
Excellent! This time, we will definitely slay Muzan Kibutsuji, Kyojuro Rengoku declared with unwavering determination. Is the centuries-long struggle of the Demon Slayer Corps finally coming to an end? Jiyomi Himajima exclaimed, tears streaming down his face. Chapter 53, Preparing to Ambush Muzan Kibutsuji.
The other Hashira, not yet familiar with Roy, their new leader, remained silent.
Except for Sanemi Shinazugawa, the Wind Hashira. Hey! You, Roy, is it? Sanemi shouted, pointing at Roy with a rude gesture. What makes you think you can just waltz in and become the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps? Despite his notoriously aggressive, bloodthirsty, and volatile nature, Sanemi held deep respect for Kagaya Ubuyoshiki. Therefore, he naturally harbored animosity towards Roy, who had seemingly usurped Kagaya's position. Your name is Sanemi Shinazugawa, correct? Roy asked calmly, unfazed by Sanemi's outburst. That's right. I'm the Wind Hashira, Sanemi Shinazugawa. Are you curious why I become the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps? Roy asked, then turned to Siko. Siko, take him aside and teach him a lesson. With pleasure, Siko replied with a sly smile. Shinazugawa-san, please follow me. Siko gestured with a playful smirk. What? You want to fight? I'm always up for a brawl. Sanemi's bloodlust surged. He never backed down from a fight. They moved to an open area outside the Butterfly Mansion, followed by Roy and the others. Shinazugawa-san, please, Siko said with a bow. Humph. You first, Sanemi scoffed, crossing his arms. Very well. Then please be careful, Shinazugawa-san. Sanemi's dismissive attitude angered Siko. She drew her sword and vanished in an instant. Sanemi blinked, surprised by her sudden disappearance. He looked around but couldn't find her. Then, he felt a cold blade pressed against his neck from behind. Sanemi froze, cold sweat trickling down his back. My, Shinazugawa-san, you're quite careless, aren't you? Siko chuckled from behind him. Perhaps you weren't prepared, she added playfully, retracting her sword and returning to her original position. This time, Shinazugawa-san, you may attack first. The other Hashira knew that Sanemi was no match for Siko. However, they weren't fond of his aggressive and bloodthirsty nature, so none of them spoke up in his defense. Siko's words enraged Sanemi, his eyes bloodshot. As a proud and fierce warrior, he couldn't accept defeat. Humph. Sanemi grunted, as if to warn Siko of his incoming attack. He charged towards her, wielding a Nichiren blade in each hand. Siko simply chuckled at his straightforward assault. With a few casual sidesteps, she effortlessly evaded his attacks. Sanemi's attacks were far too direct and predictable. After his first attack missed, he swung his other sword. Siko dodged again with ease. Sanemi's two swords whirled around him like a whirlwind, but Siko effortlessly evaded every blow, occasionally placing her blade against his neck without striking. This tactic, though not physically harmful, was incredibly humiliating. Sanemi, due to his love for battle, was covered in scars. He wasn't afraid of being cut, but being unable to land a hit and constantly taunted was unbearable. Stop dodging, coward! Sanemi roared as he continued his assault. Clang! A crisp sound echoed through the air. Sanemi's Nichiren blade had been sliced clean in two. Siko's sword was once again at his neck, a thin line of blood trickling down. Sanemi, however, ignored the blood and stared at his broken sword in disbelief. I lost. He muttered, really defeated. Siko chuckled softly and returned to Roy's side. With the troublemaker dealt with, Roy addressed the other Hashira. Prepare yourselves. We depart for Asakusa in 1 hour. Yes, Roy-sama, the Hashira replied and dispersed to make their preparations. An hour later, Roy set off with the Hashira and over 100 demon slayers. By the time they arrived in Asakusa, night had fallen. Roy and I-san, will Muzan Kibutsuji really appear here? Tanjiro asked excitedly. Roy had informed Tanjiro beforehand, so he was already waiting for them in Asakusa. To find Muzan Kibutsuji in the bustling city, they needed Tanjiro's keen sense of smell. Yes, Tanjiro. We're counting on you. Yes. Tanjiro was thrilled to be entrusted with such an important task. Hashira, stay behind us. Do not engage without my orders, Roy instructed. The rest of you, remove your Demon Slayer uniforms and blend in with the crowd. If you find Muzan Kibutsuji, evacuate the civilians immediately. Roy assigned their tasks, then entered the bustling streets of Asakusa with Tanjiro. The girls accompanying them wore beautiful kimonos over their Demon Slayer uniforms, ready for battle if needed. They strolled through the streets, searching for Muzan Kibutsuji, blending in with the crowd like ordinary people enjoying a night out. Of course, to Roy, it wasn't much different from an evening stroll. Excuse me, could we have some dango? Roy stopped at a food stall with the girls. Coming right up, the vendor replied, quickly preparing several skewers of dango. Roy took the skewers and handed them to the eager girls behind him, Makomo and Nezuko among them. Chapter 54, Muzan Kibutsuji is surrounded. Tanjiro was a bit frustrated seeing Roy in the mood for snacks while they were on such an important mission. Hey, Roy and I-san, we're supposed to be looking for Muzan Kibutsuji. He reminded Roy. What's the rush? Do you want one? Roy offered Tanjiro a skewer of dango. The sweet aroma made Tanjiro's mouth water. He wanted to refuse, but his growling stomach betrayed him. Yes, please, Tanjiro nodded, accepting the dango and taking a bite. So good, he exclaimed after the first bite. The group continued their leisurely stroll, enjoying the sights and snacks. They had explored almost the entire bustling street. Suddenly, Tanjiro caught a whiff of an indescribable scent. He froze, his takoyaki slipping from his grasp. Oniai-chan, you shouldn't waste food like that. Nezuko swiftly caught the takoyaki and scolded Tanjiro while placing her hands on her hips. It seems Muzan Kibutsuji has appeared, Roy said, observing Tanjiro's reaction. He knew that Tanjiro must have sensed Muzan's presence. Really? Muzan Kibutsuji is here? Shinobu asked eagerly. Yes. Tanjiro, lead the way, Roy instructed, patting Tanjiro's shoulder, bringing him back to his senses. Ah. Okay. Roy signaled the Demon Slayers and the Hashira to follow. Led by Tanjiro, they arrived at a sheltered alleyway. At the entrance stood a woman and her daughter. Roy recognized them as the wife and child of the human identity Muzan had assumed. This meant Muzan was nearby. The scent is getting stronger. He must be inside, Tanjiro said, pointing towards the alley with a serious expression. Roy turned to Shinobu. Shinobu-san, have the Demon Slayers evacuate the civilians. And bring those two with you as well, he said, gesturing towards the woman and her daughter. Yes, Roy-sama. Shinobu replied and went to carry out his orders. Let's go inside, Roy said, leading the others into the alley. The dark alley was filthy and littered with debris. The pale moonlight cast an eerie glow. Thick, crimson blood stained the ground, sending chills down their spines. At the end of the alley, a figure stood amidst several bodies lying in pools of blood. Please, don't kill me, don't kill me. A burly man pleaded, his face contorted with terror as he looked at the merciless demon before him. He and his companions had intended to rob and assault passers-by. But this man had brutally murdered his friends. The man's eyes were filled with despair. Muzan Kibutsuji, however, seemed to relish the man's pleas. Over the centuries, he had encountered countless individuals who foolishly challenged him. He reveled in their cries for mercy before ending their lives. Just as he was about to kill the man, he noticed a group of people approaching from behind. Well, Muzan Kibutsuji, enjoying yourself, are we? Roy taunted, observing Muzan, who was dressed like Michael Jackson. What? That's Muzan Kibutsuji? Is that what Muzan Kibutsuji looks like? Damn that demon! He's killed again. We must kill him today.
The demon slayers behind Roy murmured amongst themselves.
Muzan's eyes narrowed as his name was called out. He turned to see a group of people in demon slayer uniforms. His heart pounded as he realized he was surrounded. An urge to flee surged within him.
Muzan Kibutsuji, don't even think about escaping. You won't get away. The centuries-long feud between the Demon Slayer Corps and demons will end here today, Jyomi Himojima declared, his hands clasped together, tears streaming down his face.
Roy-sama, please allow me to slay Muzan Kibutsuji. Sanemi Shinazugawa pleaded, kneeling before Roy.
After being soundly defeated by Siko, Sanemi had become much more subdued.
Step aside, Sanemi.
You're no match for him, Roy said, waving him away.
Sanemi clenched his fists, frustration burning in his eyes, but he obeyed. How did you find me? Muzan demanded, bewildered.
For over 1,000 years, he had lived among humans without ever being detected by the Demon Slayer Corps.
How had they suddenly found him? It doesn't matter how we found you. All you need to know is that today is the day you die. Shinobu sneered.
Ha!
You think you can kill me?
Your Demon Slayer Corps has only recently managed to kill an upper-rank Muzan scoffed. Indeed, in the past 1,000 years, many Hashira had died at the hands of the upper ranks, and only few upper rank had ever been slain. The Hashira felt a pang of shame.
Muzan's words were true. This time is different. Our new leader is a devil. He will definitely kill you. Mitsuri declared, her faith in Roy unwavering.
Oh? A devil, you say? Muzan finally focused his attention on Roy, who stood at the forefront. As he looked at Roy, a sense of dread washed over him. He felt as if this man could effortlessly end his life.
All right, who wants to go first? Roy asked the girls, cutting off Muzan's rambling. Chapter 55, The Four Girls Battle Muzan Kibutsuji.
The only ones present who could fight Muzan Kibutsuji were the girls.
Although Jyomi Himojima and the other Hashira could also hold their own against Muzan if they activated their Demon Slayer marks, there was no need for that.
Activating the Demon Slayer mark significantly shortened their lifespans. In the original story, Muzan was ambushed by Tamayo, who injected him with a drug that turned him into a human. Although Muzan eventually decomposed the drug, it transformed into an aging agent once decomposed. This drug, created by Tamayo, could age Muzan by 50 years per minute. Excluding the time it took for the drug to take effect, Muzan had aged at least 9,000 years. Due to his accelerated aging, his speed and stamina were declining, and he couldn't even swiftly kill a few Hashira. Even so, the Demon Slayer Corps suffered heavy losses before they could hold out until dawn. Ultimately, Muzan perished under the sunlight. This demonstrated Muzan's immense power. Hearing Roy's words, the girls were eager to fight. Roy, let me go first. Siko, impatient to battle a strong opponent, was the first to volunteer.
Roy considered this for a moment. Siko, you won't be able to defeat him alone. Then how about with me as well? Shinobu stepped forward. And me. Kane also expressed her desire to join the fight. Their conversation was overheard by Muzan Kibutsuji. He was enraged, his fear of Roy momentarily forgotten. Never had he, the Demon King, been treated as mere prey to be fought over. It was an insult. Furious, Muzan transformed his arms into whip-like appendages and lashed out at them. The whips tore through the air with tremendous force, reducing the walls on either side of the alley to rubble. Seiko! Shinobu! Roy called out calmly in the face of Muzan's ferocious attack. Seiko and Shinobu understood what they had to do. They swiftly moved to intercept Muzan's whips, their swords deflecting the attacks. Kaneo, you join the fight as well. Everyone else, stand back. Kane and Kaneo joined the fray. Roy, along with Makomo, Nezuko, Mitsuri, and Tanjiro, retreated to a nearby rooftop, as did the Hashira.
The reason Roy only sent Siko and the others to fight Muzin was that they were all at the early stages of middle-class devil. They needed a challenging battle to solidify their strength. Muzin possessed the power of high-class devil. If Nezuko and Mitsuri joined the fight, there would be no suspense, as both of them were capable of taking on high-class devils. Makomo, being only at the early stage of middle-class devil, was not ready for such a fight. She was there simply to be adorable. With that thought, Roy gently patted Makomo's head. The area around Muzin, spanning 100 meters, was reduced to ruins. Muzin wielded 4 whip-like appendages, capable of extending and retracting, serving both offensive and defensive purposes. Each whip targeted one of the girls. Siko and the others were momentarily held back. But they weren't content with being on the defensive. They unleashed their techniques. Thunder breathing, thunder flash. This was a technique Siko had created by combining thunder breathing, first form, thunderclap and flash with Iato. It was as fast as lightning. Siko's form blurred with a flash of thunder, and she vanished from her spot. She bypassed the whips and appeared beside Muzin, slashing at him without hesitation. Thwack! Caught off guard, Muzin's neck was struck. However, his neck was incredibly tough. Even Siko's blade could only penetrate halfway before getting stuck. Siko swiftly retracted her sword and retreated, dodging the incoming whips. Wow! Siko-ne-san's attack was amazing. If I remember correctly, Siko has only been learning thunder breathing for half a month. Yes. She's incredible. Shinobu and Kane were impressed by Siko's successful strike. To unleash such power after only half a month of training in thunder breathing and even develop a new technique by combining it with her swordsmanship was truly admirable. Unfortunately, it didn't cause any significant damage, Siko said with a sigh. His regenerative abilities are too strong. Shinobu exclaimed, watching as the wound on Muzin's neck instantly healed. Perhaps it's because Siko isn't using a Nichiren blade. Watch this. Kane said, stepping forward. Flower breathing, final form, vermilion eye. This was the ultimate technique of flower breathing. By applying pressure to her eyeballs, Kane pushed her dynamic vision to its limit, slowing down the movements of everything around her. Like a graceful butterfly, Kane weaved through Muzin's whips, effortlessly reaching him. Flower breathing, 6th form, whirling peach, she shouted. Kane gracefully flipped in midair and unleashed a horizontal slash, her Nichiren blade leaving a trail of flower petals in its wake. The attack was as beautiful as it was deadly. Thwack! The blade sliced into Muzin's neck, but once again, it only penetrated halfway before stopping. Muzin's neck regenerated at an astonishing speed. Kane had no choice but to retreat. It seems we can't sever his head, she said with a sigh. Even Siko and Kane, the strongest among them, couldn't cut through Muzin's neck. Defeating him seemed like an impossible task. Chapter 56, Nezuko and Mitsuri join the battle. Having been struck on the neck twice in a row, Muzin Kibutsuji glared at the 4 girls with fury. You demon slayers are very persistent. Why does everyone want revenge against me? Can't you simply focus on your own survival? He snarled. Ha? What are you talking about? Shinobu retorted, her voice laced with disbelief and anger. Do you have any idea how much suffering you've caused? How many families have been torn apart because of you? And you dare say such things? Shinobu's eyes burned with killing intent. She wanted nothing more than to tear Muzin to shreds. However, Muzin showed no remorse. He looked at them with disdain. The people I kill are no different from those who perish in natural disasters. There's no need to dwell on it. After all, the dead cannot be brought back to life. Shouldn't you simply focus on living your own lives peacefully? Why bother seeking revenge against me? Muzin had the audacity to compare himself to a natural disaster. It was true that if someone died in a natural disaster, no one would delve into the cause, nor could they. But Muzin Kibutsuji was not a natural disaster. Before Muzin could continue his self-righteous justification, the 4 girls had heard enough. Even Kane, who had always believed in the possibility of peaceful coexistence between demons and humans, realized that Muzin was incapable of understanding human bonds. You don't deserve to exist in this world, she declared, her voice filled with icy rage. The four girls charged at Muzin once more, their attacks even more ferocious than before. However, Muzin wasn't easily defeated. He had been holding back, searching for an opportunity to escape. But realizing he was completely surrounded with no escape route, he issued a command to all demons, including the 12 Kazuki, to come to his aid. Demons from all over surged towards Asakusa, none daring to disobey his orders. Muzin decided to eliminate the four women before him first. 9 whip-like appendages suddenly sprouted from his back, lashing out at the girls with incredible speed. Look out! Kane, with her enhanced vision, was the first to notice the tube-like whips and warned the others. Siko and the others reacted, but the whips were simply too fast. Caught off guard, Siko, Shinobu, and Kaneo were struck and sent flying. Kane, who had initially blocked the whips, was overwhelmed by their numbers. There were 9 whips in total, 2 for each girl. The extra whip targeted Kane, who had reacted first. She was caught off guard and knocked back. In an instant, all 4 girls were defeated. The difference in strength between an high-class devil and a peak middle-class devil was huge. Roy wasn't surprised by their defeat. He turned to Nezuko and Mitsuri Kanroji. You two, go and give it a try. Have Siko and the others come back. Roy remembered Muzin's true trump card, the 8 whips hidden within his legs. These were his fastest whips, far surpassing the 9 on his upper body and the 2 on his arms. The sonic booms they produced could crack the earth, demonstrating their immense power. If Muzin unleashed those 8 whips, Siko and the others would be helpless. That's why he had Nezuko and Mitsuri replace them. Nezuko and Mitsuri nodded and entered the fray. Siko and the others, though reluctant, obeyed and returned. Although they weren't severely injured, being defeated so easily left them with a sense of frustration. Don't worry about it, Roy reassured them with a smile. Muzin Kibutsuji is far stronger than you. His words eased their disappointment. With Nezuko and Mitsuri joining the battle, Muzin's rage intensified. He lashed out with his whips and the tube-like appendages from his back. Demonization. Nezuko activated her demon blood art. Her body rapidly matured into that of an adult woman. A complete demon horn emerged from her forehead, and her body was covered in wisteria-like patterns. In this state, Nezuko's bloodlust and destructive power surged. Her regeneration even surpassed that of some upper-ranked demons. Even if her body were dismembered, she could effortlessly reattach the severed parts with her blood and regenerate instantly. However, Nezuko didn't dodge Muzin's attacks. She allowed several whips to pierce her body, blood gushing out. But her expression remained unchanged. She calmly uttered a single word. Exploding blood. Her blood ignited, transforming into flames that engulfed her, instantly cauterizing her wounds. Muzin's whips were incinerated, the flames spreading towards him along the appendages. Muzin swiftly severed the whips to prevent the flames from reaching him. Meanwhile, Mitsuri activated her Demon Slayer mark, significantly enhancing her physical abilities. The side effects of the mark were negligible for a devil. She fearlessly took Muzin's attacks head-on. Muzin's whips couldn't harm her. Her superhuman physique withstood every blow. Love-breathing, first form, shivers of first love. Mitsuri unleashed a series of whip-like slashes, instantly severing several of Muzin's whips. In a single exchange, Muzin suffered a significant setback, all the whips on his back destroyed. Chapter 57, Roy takes action. Despite their combined efforts, Nezuko and Mitsuri couldn't inflict any significant damage on Muzin Kibutsuji. His whip-like appendages regenerated within moments. The Hashira, observing the intense battle from the rooftop, were drenched in cold sweat. They knew that if they were in the fight, they wouldn't last a few rounds against Muzin unless they fought with the desperation of someone with nothing to lose. They understood why Roy had prevented them from joining the battle. He was protecting their lives. Muzan, having suffered a setback, didn't rush to attack. Instead, he turned his attention to Nezuko.
"You're a demon too?"
"But why can't I control you?" he questioned, his voice laced with suspicion.
Nezuko scoffed. "I'm not a filthy demon. I'm a noble devil." Muzan's eyes turned cold.
He didn't believe in devils. To him, Nezuko was just another demon who had escaped his control. And those who defied him had to be eliminated. Without further ado, Muzan lashed out with the 9 whips from his back.
Nezuko and Mitsuri calmly countered his attacks. Suddenly, a series of sonic booms echoed through the air. 8 whips erupted from the ground around Muzan's feet, extending towards Nezuko and Mitsuri. Bang! Bang!
The 2 girls were sent flying.
What was that? The Hashira on the rooftop couldn't see what had struck Nezuko and Mitsuri.
They hadn't yet unlocked the transparent world, as they hadn't faced a life-or-death situation like the final battle against Muzan in the original story. Even Muzan's 9 upper body whips were difficult for them to track, let alone his hidden trump card. Indeed, it was the 8 whips concealed within Muzan's legs that had struck the girls.
Roy hadn't warned them because he knew those whips wouldn't harm them. Nezuko and Mitsuri, who had crashed into a pile of rubble, burst forth, shaking off the debris. Although Muzan's hidden whips were faster, they couldn't penetrate Mitsuri's defenses, they could only knock her back. And against Nezuko, Muzan didn't dare pierce her with his whips, fearing her exploding blood technique. Therefore, the 2 girls were unfazed by Muzan's hidden weapons. Now aware of his trump card, they were prepared and no longer easily knocked back. Muzan found himself on the defensive against their relentless assault. Nezuko, in her mature form, was a force to be reckoned with.
Every punch and kick had the power to shatter mountains.
If she got close enough, she could crush Muzan's head with a single blow. Mitsuri was equally formidable.
She fearlessly withstood Muzan's attacks, aiming to sever his head.
However, Muzan's regeneration was monstrous, and such injuries couldn't kill him.
Just then, Tengen Yuzui, the Sound Hashira, appeared beside Roy.
"Roy-sama, a large number of demons are converging on Asakusa," he reported.
Roy was momentarily surprised. Then, he understood.
Muzan was summoning his subordinates to aid his escape.
The first to arrive would undoubtedly be the upper ranks, and the demon slayers stationed outside wouldn't be able to stop them.
"Quickly dispatch the Hashira to intercept them," Roy ordered.
Tengen relayed the command, and the Hashira rushed to confront the incoming demons.
Roy then turned to Siko and the others. "Siko, you go as well. The Hashira won't be able to handle the upper ranks. You'll need to intervene." "No problem."
Siko replied with a sweet smile, and the 4 girls vanished.
"It seems it's time to finish Muzan Kibutsuji," Roy declared, observing the Demon King struggling against Nezuko and Mitsuri.
He had to act quickly before Nakime arrived. Nakime was Muzan's close aide, and her blood demon art allowed her to manipulate the layout of the Infinity Castle. She could also teleport others. It would be troublesome if Muzan escaped with her help.
Muzan seemed to sense Roy's intent, and fear gripped his heart.
The once ferocious Demon King suddenly disintegrated, his body splitting into countless fragments that scattered in all directions.
Nezuko and Mitsuri were confused, unsure of Muzan's intentions.
Roy, however, recognized this tactic. It was the same life-saving technique Muzan had used against Yorichi Tsujikuni 1,000 years ago. Muzan could split his body into 1,800 fragments, like a self-destruct mechanism. It was one of his trump cards and his ultimate survival tactic. Even if most of the fragments were destroyed, as long as a single piece remained, Muzan could fully regenerate with his unparalleled recovery abilities. Some of the fragments were incredibly tiny.
Even Yorichi could only destroy the larger 1,500 fragments in an instant. But facing this tactic, Roy couldn't help but smile.
"Nezuko, Mitsuri, come back," he called out. The 2 girls returned to his side.
"Secret art, I see 9 dragons."
Roy extended his hand, and 9 ice dragons materialized, encircling Muzan. The dragons slowly converged, and Musen, sensing the danger, gathered his scattered fragments, reforming his human body.
The 9 ice dragons merged, instantly encasing Musen in ice, creating a towering ice sculpture.
Everyone who witnessed this scene, both ordinary civilians and demon slayers, was stunned.
It was a miracle.
Some people stood in silent awe, their expressions filled with wonder and reverence.
Chapter 58, Resolving Musen Kibutsuji. Even Nezuko and Mitsuri were stunned by the sight of Musen frozen solid.
When they recovered from their shock, they looked at Roy with admiration. Roy smirked, a hint of pride in his eyes. The Icy 9 Dragons was a magnificent and powerful technique. It was one of the stronger techniques that Satellizer L. Bridget possessed, though Roy could only unleash a fraction of its full potential. Even so, it was more than enough to instantly kill Musen Kibutsuji.
Any living being caught in this attack would be utterly destroyed. However, Roy didn't kill Musen outright.
He merely froze him solid.
Musen Kibutsuji, Roy chuckled, how would you like to die? You can't kill me. Musen declared, his voice filled with manic confidence in his near-absolute regenerative abilities. Oh? Is that so? Then would you like to experience the feeling of being exposed to sunlight? Roy taunted. Musen's face paled with fear.
If there was one thing that could truly kill him, it was sunlight.
Musen was speechless.
It's a shame, though, Roy continued with a sly smile. After you die, your subordinates, the upper ranks and the others, might just choose a new demon king.
Roy's intention was simple. Eliminating Musen wouldn't solve the demon problem quickly.
The 12 Kazuki still remained, and the upper ranks were beyond the capabilities of the Demon Slayer Corps. And Roy and his group would eventually leave this world. That's why he deliberately angered Musen with those words. He wanted Musen to eliminate all the other demons himself.
As the progenitor of demons, Musen could use his bloodline curse to kill any demon.
As expected, Musen's eyes burned with killing intent upon hearing Roy's words. With his ruthless, selfish, and egotistical nature, he would never allow the upper ranks, whom he considered mere tools, to become the new demon king. Now that he had no escape, he would drag all demons down with him.
Musen activated his bloodline curse. Outside Asakusa, Siko, and the others had just slain a few upper ranks and were about to deal with the remaining demons. Suddenly, all the hundreds of demons present collapsed, their bodies turning to ash and fading away. Not only that, but almost every demon in existence, except for those who had broken free from Musen's control, perished at that moment. What's going on? Is Musen Kibutsuji dead? Siko and the others exchanged surprised glances, then returned to Roy's side.
They marveled at the massive ice sculpture that held Musen, their eyes filled with admiration for Roy.
Is Musen Kibutsuji dead?
Shinobu asked, peering at the frozen figure.
Not yet. We'll let him die slowly, Roy replied. He instructed Jiyomi Himajima and the other Hashira to guard the ice sculpture. They then retired to a nearby residence arranged by the Demon Slayer Corps.
Roy wasn't worried about Musen escaping. Unless the ice was exposed to direct sunlight for 10 days or half a month, it wouldn't melt. When the sun rose, Musen would be reduced to ashes. Roy would let him savor the anticipation of his demise.
That night, Kagaya Abuyoshiki also arrived.
Despite his frail health, he had decided to come after hearing that Musen had been captured and the other demons had perished. He wanted to witness Musen's end. As the first rays of dawn broke through the horizon, Musen Kibutsuji finally turned to ash and vanished from existence.
The Demon Slayers breathed a collective sigh of relief. On behalf of the entire Demon Slayer Corps, we thank you, Roy-san. Kagaya declared, leading the Hashira and the other Demon Slayers in a deep bow of gratitude.
There's no need for thanks. It was purely a transaction, Roy replied. With his mission accomplished, Roy relinquished his position as the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps. Now that Musen Kibutsuji has been dealt with, it's time for us to depart.
With a wave of his hand, Roy summoned an ice-blue magic circle beneath their feet. In an instant, they vanished. He really is an extraordinary individual, Amain Abuyoshiki remarked, watching them disappear. Yes.
Thanks to him, the Demon Slayer Corps was able to eliminate Muzan Kibutsuji and countless other demons with minimal casualties, Kagaya said, deeply grateful to Roy.
Roy and his group reappeared in the Butterfly Mansion. He decided to stay at the Butterfly Mansion for a while instead of immediately returning to Kuo Academy. He instructed the Kocho sisters to teach Tanjiro medical skills. He wanted to look after his brother-in-law, especially since he was about to take Nezuko away. Before leaving, he wanted to ensure Tanjiro's future. He didn't have such concerns for the other girls. Over the next month, Roy spent his time practicing Satellizer L. Bridget's techniques, breathing styles, and spending time with the girls. Within that month, Tanjiro grasped the basics of medicine. However, a month wasn't enough to become proficient. But he could now handle simple illnesses and injuries. It was time for Roy to return to the world of Highschool DxD. Tanjiro, it's time for us to go, Roy said, patting Tanjiro's shoulder.
Roy and I-san.
Nezuko. Tanjiro's eyes welled up with tears.
Oni-chan, you're a grown-up now.
Why are you still so teary-eyed?
Nezuko scolded, putting her hands on her hips, though her own eyes were also a bit red.
Chapter 59, A Bountiful Harvest.
Tanjiro, we're leaving the Butterfly Mansion in your care, Shinobu said, expressing her satisfaction with Tanjiro as her student.
Don't worry, Tanjiro.
We'll come back to visit when we have the chance, Roy reassured him, leaving behind enough wealth for Tanjiro to live comfortably as a landowner. With Tanjiro now equipped with medical skills, they had no further concerns.
Roy activated the system's teleportation function. In the next moment, he and the girls vanished from the Butterfly Mansion.
Back in Roy's castle in the world of Highschool DxD, Asia, Sa, Shizuka, Yuriko, Alice, and Rika watched as Roy and Seiko disappeared before their eyes.
Roy had told them he might return in the blink of an eye, so they waited patiently. Why hasn't Roy come back yet? Asia asked anxiously, barely a second after they had vanished. No one answered.
They all shared her worry.
Suddenly, a brilliant light filled the room. Roy and the others reappeared.
The girls rushed towards them with cries of joy. Saya was about to leap into Roy's arms, but she stopped short, noticing the new girls behind him.
Jealousy flared within her. Humph. I knew you'd bring other women back with you.
Saya huffed, turning her head away, though she couldn't resist stealing glances at Roy.
Roy noticed Saya's reaction. It was expected. After all, Saya wouldn't be Saya without her tsundere antics. And Roy loved that about her. He put down little Alice, who had been clinging to him, and approached Saya.
I love you the most, Saya, he whispered in her ear.
Come to my room tonight. Idiot. Who would do that?
Saya stammered, her face flushed crimson.
Roy chuckled.
He loved how flustered she became, even as she pretended to refuse.
That evening, to welcome the new members, Shizuka, Seiko, Kane, and Shinobu prepared a grand feast.
Over dinner, the girls bonded and became as close as sisters. As promised, Saya received a thorough lesson from Roy that night. The next day, Roy returned to his usual routine.
Saya, Asia, Seiko, wake up. It's time for school.
With the help of Shizuka, his maid, Roy got ready for the day and enjoyed a hearty breakfast.
Saya, Asia, and Seiko finally emerged after a long wait. They gathered at the entrance.
It's all your fault for waking up so late.
Look, we're already late for class. Roy grumbled.
Humph.
Whose fault do you think it is that we woke up late?
Saya retorted, glaring at him.
Her legs still felt wobbly.
Roy shrugged helplessly, unable to argue with that.
What are you waiting for? Open the portal to school. Saya demanded.
Yes, my lady, Roy sighed, activating the teleportation magic.
He made a mental note to give Saya another lesson that night. Saya shivered, sensing impending doom. At school, under the watchful eyes of their homeroom teacher and classmates, Roy returned to his seat, his expression nonchalant.
Saya and Asia, however, scurried to their seats, their faces flushed.
The teacher didn't comment and continued with the lesson. Hey, Bucho, why are you late today? Did you overdo it last night? Ika Kiryu whispered to Roy as soon as he sat down.
Of course. That's why we woke up so late. My legs are still wobbly, Roy replied casually. Ika looked at him with a mixture of disgust and amusement.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I was talking about Saya.
Look, her legs are still shaking.
Roy pointed towards Saya.
Ika glanced at Saya, who was slumped over her desk, her legs positioned in an awkward, unsteady manner.
You're right, Ika nodded.
Saya, sensing their whispers and glances, had a feeling they were talking about her.
Seems like Bucho was quite the stallion, huh? Ika remarked with a sly grin.
Naturally, Roy replied without missing a beat. The two of them discussed such matters without a hint of embarrassment.
By the way, after school, you three come with me to the kendo club.
I have something important to discuss with you, Roy suddenly said to Ika.
Sure. Ika didn't question him further.
After school, Roy took Ika, Murayama, and Keitase to his private training room at the kendo club.
Bucho, what's this important matter? Ika finally asked, unable to contain her curiosity.
I'm going to teach you a new swordsmanship style, Roy explained with a smile.
If you can master it within a month, I'll give you a surprise. Wow! A new swordsmanship style? Awesome! Murayama and Keitase exclaimed excitedly. Ika, however, wondered what the surprise might be. Let's begin, then.
Roy planned to teach them water breathing. If they could master it within a month, he would make them his servants.
Chapter 60, A Date and a Little Kitten. If they couldn't learn it, then they simply weren't meant to. Water breathing was the simplest of all the breathing styles.
Ika, Murayama, and Keitase had been practicing kendo for a long time, and their physical conditioning was excellent.
Learning breathing styles would be much easier for them, which was why Roy had given them a 1-month deadline. Water breathing, first form, water surface slash. After explaining the training method, Roy demonstrated the technique.
His wooden sword created a wave of water, effortlessly slicing through several wooden posts.
Whoa!
Amazing, the three girls exclaimed in unison, their eyes sparkling with admiration.
Was that a sword technique? That's incredible! How did Bucho do that?
That was a breathing style, Roy explained with a smile.
If you master it, you can do the same. Really?
Of course.
With his confirmation, the three girls eagerly began practicing.
Driven by their desire to impress Roy and earn the promised reward, they trained diligently. Oh, one more thing, Roy suddenly remembered something. The three girls looked at him expectantly. Roy grinned mischievously.
Focus your mind, and reach the pinnacle. Focus your mind, and reach the pinnacle? Although they didn't understand the meaning of those words, they etched them into their memories.
Roy provided some further guidance, then left them to their training.
Back at his castle, Roy began teaching Saya and the others breathing styles.
Breathing styles were incredibly practical, enhancing physical abilities and reflexes.
Even Shizuka and the others, who focused on magic, could benefit from learning it.
After all, learning breathing styles was relatively easy for devils.
On the weekend, Roy took Saya out on a date. He wasn't very familiar with Kuo Town.
It seemed to be a modern city, quite large despite being called a town.
Saya was overjoyed to be on a date with Roy.
She skipped happily alongside him, holding his hand, her childlike nature shining through. They strolled through the bustling streets, shopping, enjoying delicious food, and having fun.
Saya, let's go there, Roy suggested, pointing to an arcade across the street. Okay. I'm a genius and a beautiful girl. I'm amazing at games. Saya declared confidently, puffing out her chest. Let's go then. Roy led Saya into the arcade. Let's play this game.
After looking around, Roy chose a fighting game. They sat down and started a versus match.
The fighting game was similar to King of Fighters, though not as classic.
The controls were also quite similar, and Roy quickly got the hang of it. Saya, living up to her reputation as a genius, also mastered the controls quickly.
They engaged in an intense battle. Take this. Here's my special move. Haha, how about this technique?
Completely engrossed in the game, they shouted and cheered, oblivious to their surroundings.
Their exciting match drew a crowd of onlookers.
Despite her intelligence, Saya lacked experience in fighting games. After all, she was a model student. Roy, on the other hand, was a King of Fighters expert in his previous life. Having familiarized himself with this game, he naturally had the upper hand. Soon, Saya couldn't keep up, and Roy mercilessly defeated her.
Humph. Roy, you should go easy on me. Saya pouted, acting spoiled.
The onlookers were bombarded with a wave of cuteness.
A challenger?
Just as Roy was about to leave with Saya, a challenge request appeared on his arcade screen.
Still eager to play, Roy accepted without hesitation.
Anyone who dared to challenge him after witnessing his previous match was clearly no pushover. Within a single round, Roy realized his opponent was a skilled player. He lost the first round.
Roy got serious for the second round. Saya cheered him on from the sidelines. Roy won the second round.
He lost the third, won the fourth, and continued this back and forth until the 10th round, ultimately winning the match with a score of 6-4.
The onlookers were thrilled by the intense match.
They hadn't seen such a close and exciting battle in a long time.
His opponent didn't request another rematch. Instead, they walked over from the arcade machine opposite Roy. Whoa! It's Kaneko-chan! Roy exclaimed in surprise. He hadn't expected his formidable opponent to be Kaneko Tuju.
Roy-senpai, you're so strong, Kaneko said with her usual stoic expression. She didn't seem surprised to see him. It seemed she had witnessed his match with Saya and decided to challenge him.
Kaneko-chan, you're very skilled too, Roy replied with a smile.
Kaneko's expression remained unchanged.
She glanced at Saya, then back at Roy.
Roy-senpai, are you on a date? She asked.
Yes, we are. Kaneko-chan, would you like to join us? Roy readily confirmed and extended an invitation to Kaneko. No, thank you.
I have to go home, Kaneko declined.
But before I go, Roy-senpai, I have a favor to ask. Oh? What is it? Roy looked at Kaneko curiously. Bucho hasn't been in a good mood lately. Neither I nor Akino-senpai can comfort her.
I was hoping you could visit the Occult Research Club, Kaneko explained, her eyes filled with hope. Roy pondered her words and quickly understood the source of Ria's distress.
Under pressure from her family, Rias was engaged to Riser Phoenix, the third son of the Phoenix family, one of the 72 pillars. The engagement ceremony was approaching. However, Rias didn't love Riser and was deeply troubled by the impending marriage. Don't worry, Kaneko-chan.
I'll definitely visit the Occult Research Club, Roy assured her.
Kaneko nodded and left. Roy and Saya continued their date.
The next day, after school, Roy went to the Occult Research Club as promised. He knocked, but there was no response. He pushed the door open. The clubroom wasn't empty. Ria sat at her desk, her chin resting on her hands, staring blankly ahead, lost in thought. Roy quietly approached her.
Ria-senpai, what are you thinking about? He asked playfully, leaning close to her face. Ah!
Rias yelped, startled by Roy's sudden appearance. Her flustered expression was adorable.
Roy burst into laughter.
Rias realized it was Roy's doing and playfully glared at him.
Roy-kun, you've become quite mischievous. Ha, not at all.
You were just too deep in thought, Ria-senpai, Roy retorted with feigned innocence. Ria's smile faded as the topic shifted back to her worries.
That wraps up this part of What If Reborn in Highschool DxD is a Lucifuge. Thanks so much for listening.
As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned.
Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.